Why I hate my parents, but how I finally stopped letting them own me. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would say this out loud, but here it is. I hate my parents. And before anyone rushes in with a "but they're your parents, they did the best they could," let me just stop you. Sometimes the people who were supposed to love you, raise you, and protect you are the exact same people who taught you how to hate yourself. I grew up in what everyone thought was a normal American family. From the outside, we looked like a picture-perfect suburban household. My dad worked a respectable office job. My mom was a stay-at-home parent who baked cookies for PTA meetings. We lived in a house with a white fence, had 2 cars, and even went to church on Sundays. Neighbors would always say things like, "Oh, your parents are so wonderful," or "You're so lucky to have such a supportive family." I used to smile and nod, but inside I wanted to scream, because no one saw what it was really like behind closed doors. Behind those closed doors, my parents were masters of control, manipulation, and emotional warfare. They didn't hit me. They didn't need to. They broke me in quieter ways, in ways that left no visible marks but carved scars into my brain that I'm still trying to heal years later. Remember being around 6 years old when I first realized something was off. I had drawn this silly little picture in kindergarten of a rainbow with stick figures, me and my parents holding hands under it. I came home beaming, shoved it in my mom's face, and said, "Look, I made this for you." She didn't smile. She didn't hug me. She just frowned and said, "Why do you always color so messy? Couldn't you make a line straight for once? And that doesn't even look like me." It sounds small, right? Just a comment about a drawing. But to a 6-year-old, that was my whole world. I wasn't looking for an art critique. I was looking for love. Instead, I learned that love was conditional, that even something as innocent as a crayon rainbow could be judged, mocked, and found not good enough. That became the pattern of my childhood. Report cards? Straight A's weren't impressive. The 1 B+ was a disaster. Why aren't you like a Henderson's kid? He got into honors math a year early. Sports. I tried soccer, scored 1 goal, came running to my dad, and the first thing he said was, "Why didn't you score more? You were being lazy on defense." Birthdays? Forget it. One year I asked for a dollhouse I had been begging for, and my mom sneered, "That's too expensive. You don't deserve it when you can't even keep your room clean." On the morning of my 13th birthday, I came downstairs in a dress I had saved up allowance money to buy, and my mom looked me up and down and said, "That makes you look fat. Go change." I wanted the ground to swallow me whole, but the real poison wasn't just in the insults. It was in the constant guilt tripping. Anytime I showed emotion, anger, sadness, disappointment, they turned it around. If I said I was upset, my mom would cry and wail about how ungrateful I was, how she gave up her whole life to raise me and I couldn't even appreciate it. My dad would give me the silent treatment for days, acting like I was a stranger in my own house, until I finally broke down and apologized for what? Existing? Breathing wrong? You start to internalize that. You start to believe that you really are the problem, that you don't deserve love unless you earn it, that you have to bend over backwards to make people happy, and even then, it won't be enough. Middle school was hell. While other kids were experimenting with makeup or sleepovers, I was living in a cage. My parents micromanaged everything. What I wore, "You look trashy in that shirt," who I hung out with, "That girl comes from a bad family," where I went, "Why would you need to go to the mall without us?" If I wanted to go to a friend's birthday party, it turned into a 3-day guilt marathon about how unsafe it was, how they worried about me, how selfish I was for leaving them at home. 9 times out of 10, I just stopped asking. It was easier to stay home, shut the door, and fantasize about living literally anywhere else. High school only made things worse. Imagine being 16, watching your classmates go to football games, dances, hanging out at each other's houses, having sleepovers, first kisses, first heartbreaks, while you sit in your bedroom like a prisoner. My mom's paranoia was off the charts. If you go to that party, you'll get drunk and end up pregnant. If you stay out past 9, something bad will happen, and it'll be your fault. My dad enforced it with cold stares and lectures about discipline and respect. Dating? Out of the question. I had a crush on this sweet guy in my sophomore year. We talked in the library, and I remember laughing so hard one afternoon my stomach hurt. My mom somehow found out and tore into me. "Do you want to ruin your future? You think boys want you for your personality? You're going to make us ashamed." I stopped talking to him immediately. I didn't even say goodbye. I just vanished because the thought of my parents' wrath terrified me more than the pain of losing him. By the time I hit 18, I was a ghost of a person. I was the perfect obedient daughter on the outside. Good grades, no trouble, polite, quiet. But inside, I was empty. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I liked, what I wanted, who I could be. My identity had been crushed under years of manipulation and control. College was supposed to be my ticket out. I had applied to several universities in secret, pouring all my energy into essays, applications, and scholarships. When I got accepted into my dream school, 3 states away, I cried tears of joy. For the first time, I thought freedom was possible. But when my parents found out, it was nuclear. My dad exploded. He screamed about betrayal, about how I thought I was too good for them. My mom collapsed into hysterics about how she couldn't live without me, how I'd end up lost and ruined in a city alone. They refused to give me any financial documents or FAFSA. They threatened to cut me off completely if I left. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. You won't have a family anymore." And I believe them. For months, I agonized. Was I really abandoning them? Was I the selfish one? The guilt ate me alive. At one point, I actually considered staying home and commuting to the local community college just to keep the peace. But every time I imagined staying, my chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. The thought of being trapped in that house for 4 more years made me feel like dying. The breaking point came one night after yet another screaming match. I locked myself in the bathroom, sat on the cold tile floor, and sobbed so hard I thought I'd choke. I stared at myself in the mirror, red eyes, shaking hands, and whispered, "I can't do this anymore." That was the first time it really hit me. This isn't love. This is abuse. I took every ounce of courage, but I left. I cobbled together scholarship money, took out student loans, and packed my bags. My parents didn't come to see me off. They didn't hug me goodbye. My dad just muttered, "Don't expect help when you fail." My mom turned her back. I drove away with my friend in the middle of the night, tears streaming down my face, terrified and free all at once. The first few months away were brutal. I was broke. I lived off ramen noodles. I worked 2 part-time jobs while juggling classes. My parents alternated between sending me guilt-laced texts, "You don't care about us anymore, do you?" and radio silence. Every phone call ended in tears or fights. Sometimes I wondered if they were right, if I had made a huge mistake. But slowly, painfully, I started to breathe again. I made friends who actually liked me for who I was. I laughed without fear. I decorated my dorm room with silly posters and fairy lights, something I never could have done at home without ridicule. I remember one night sitting on my bed eating cheap pizza with my roommate and realizing this is what life is supposed to feel like. And then therapy happened. My university offered free counseling, and for the first time in my life, I sat across from someone who didn't dismiss me, didn't gaslight me, didn't make me feel small. My therapist listened as I spilled everything, and when she said that's emotional abuse, I broke down. Because finally, someone validated my pain. Therapy was like peeling layers off an onion. Every week, I uncovered another scar I didn't know I had. The way I apologized constantly. The way I flinched at any hint of anger. The way I sabotaged my own happiness because I thought I didn't deserve it. All of it traced back to my parents. And for the first time, I started to see the truth. I wasn't unlovable. I wasn't broken. I was hurt, and hurt can heal. Therapy cracked me open, but it also rebuilt me. One of the first things my therapist taught me was the word boundaries. I had never even heard it used in the way she meant. Boundaries? In my house, boundaries didn't exist. My parents had access to every drawer, every thought, every piece of me. Privacy wasn't allowed. Secrets weren't allowed. Hell, even feelings weren't allowed. So when she asked me, what would a healthy boundary with your parents look like? I stared blankly. I didn't know. The idea of telling them no felt impossible. Saying I don't want to talk about this felt like a fantasy. But little by little, I started practicing. The first time I told my mom on the phone, I don't want to talk about that right now, I thought I was going to throw up. She immediately started crying, wailing about how I didn't love her, how I was shutting her out. I almost backtracked. I almost gave in. But I didn't. I stayed quiet, let her cry, and then calmly said, I'm hanging up now. And I did. My hands were shaking for an hour afterward, but I felt powerful. Boundaries are messy with toxic people. They don't respect them. They see them as a challenge. My dad tried to bulldoze through mine with lectures, insults, cold silences. My mom used guilt like a weapon sharper than any knife, but I kept holding the line. Sometimes I failed. Sometimes I caved. But the important part? I kept trying. College became the place where I rebuilt myself. I joined clubs. I made friends from different backgrounds. I learned how to cook more than ramen, though ramen still had a permanent spot in my diet. I studied subjects that lit me up: psychology, literature, women's studies. And through it all, I started to realize something huge. I had worth. I had a voice. I had dreams. Things my parents told me I'd never have. Of course, the damage didn't just vanish. I carried their voices with me everywhere. I'd stand in front of the mirror and hear my mom's criticism about my body. I'd get a B on a test and hear my dad's voice calling me lazy. I'd feel guilty for enjoying myself, as if happiness was a crime. It took years, and I mean years, to untangle those voices from my own. Relationships were the hardest. I didn't know how to trust. The first guy who showed me kindness, I clung to like a lifeline. When he pulled away, I spiraled, convinced I wasn't worth loving. Another time, I pushed someone away because I was terrified they'd see how broken I was. Therapy helped me see the patterns, how I'd been trained to equate love with pain, affection with control. It wasn't my fault, but it was my responsibility to heal. One memory that sticks with me: sophomore year, I was at a friend's house for Thanksgiving because I couldn't afford the trip home. Their family was loud, messy, laughing over burnt rolls and bad jokes. At one point, her mom pulled her into a hug in the kitchen and said, I'm proud of you, sweetie. I nearly burst into tears on the spot. Something so simple, so ordinary, it felt like a foreign language to me. And in that moment, I realized just how much I had missed, how much I had been robbed of. I wish I could say I cut my parents off completely and never looked back. That's a neat, tidy ending people want to hear. But the truth? It's complicated. Sometimes I went months without speaking to them. Sometimes I answered their calls and regretted it immediately. Sometimes I even found myself craving their approval again, like some old addiction I couldn't shake. Healing isn't linear. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. What changed, though, was me. I stopped centering my life around them. I stopped letting their moods dictate my worth. I stopped believing their version of me, the ungrateful, lazy, fat, selfish daughter, and started building my own version. A version who was resilient, kind, funny, worthy. Graduation was one of the proudest days of my life. I walked across that stage, diploma in hand, and felt tears sting my eyes. My parents didn't come. They said they couldn't make the trip, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. My friends were there, screaming my name. My professors shook my hand and told me I had a bright future. For once, I wasn't grieving their absence. I was celebrating my presence. After college, I got a job in a new city. My first apartment was tiny, with peeling paint and a view of a brick wall, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every dish, every photo on the wall was something I chose. No one could barge in and rearrange my drawers. No one could criticize the way I decorated. I remember lying on the floor one night, staring at the ceiling, and whispering to myself, I'm free. Of course, the calls didn't stop. My mom demanded visits. My dad made snide comments about how I thought I was better than them. At first, those calls shattered me. I'd hang up and cry, feeling like a guilty little girl again. But slowly, I learned to detach. I learned that their words said more about them than me. I learned that I didn't have to explain or defend myself. Sometimes I'd hang up. Sometimes I wouldn't answer at all. And with every boundary, I got stronger. Now, years later, here's the truth. I still hate what my parents did to me. I hate the way they stole my childhood, the way they made me doubt every good thing about myself, the way their voices still echo in my head sometimes. But I don't let that hate define me anymore, because I also love the person I've become despite them. I love the strength I found in myself. I love the way I can laugh freely now, the way I can hug my friends without fear, the way I can dream about the future without dread. I love that I broke a cycle, that if I ever have kids someday, they'll grow up hearing I'm proud of you instead of you're not enough. Sometimes family isn't the people you're born to. Sometimes family is the friends who hold you when you cry, the roommate who shares cheap pizza with you, the partner who listens without judgment, the therapist who tells you the truth, the community that reminds you you're not alone. So why do I hate my parents? Because they chose control over love. Because they chose manipulation over kindness. Because they chose to break me instead of build me. But why am I healing? Because I chose me, and that choice every day is the reason I'm free.